Hey, Dalton. All right, so
Hey.
we've been talking for a bit here already, but just to kind of set the stage as our first introductory video, you and I have conversations all the time about trends that we're seeing with our customers, with the conversations that we have with marketing leadership. Um, and then it always occurs to us that some of the stuff we're talking about might be of use to other people as well. So
hmm
I wanted to get this sort of recorded for posterity, um, on a couple of, what are to us pretty mundane topics because we talk about them all the time. But I think there's things that others might be able to get us some interesting takeaways from our perspective here. Um, so let's start with, is there a trend of questions that you're hearing from your marketing customers these days?
Um, well, I think one thing that I hear quite commonly is, during our sessions, um, quite often I get the question of, what should I do first, right? They have a whole bunch of problems and a list of wants and needs and projects. And they kind of get down and stuck in this paralysis by analysis type situation where they don't know what they should focus on first, right? Because they have a team, they have some resources, but they're stuck in this place where they're having a hard time deciding, where they should devote their resources because there they have a lot of things that they want to solve in future projects and plans. However, they still have day-to-day operations. So I think
Yeah.
a lot of times it surrounds the question of, how do I choose what to do and how do I devote those resources towards tackling those problems?
Yeah. And bridging that gap when you have, day-to-day needs that fill up somebody's availability, but then you need them to learn something new so that you can, advance yourselves along that digital maturity scale.
hmm
So do you have a short answer for that question of how do you decide?
So usually during our sessions, we obviously have some pretty lengthy discovery and digital strategy sessions. But normally, what we do is we first begin by documenting, their goals, business operations, and mission statements and things of that nature, and really kind of understand, okay, of all the projects that you have, let's list them out. All the problems you're trying to solve. Let's list them out. And then what we end up doing is we decide, or at least not decide, but we figure out which ones would have the greatest return on investment. Secondly, we also evaluate, the level of resources and skill sets available, that the client has at their disposal.
Yeah.
Which projects do they already have the team members that have the skill and the resources? What's going to require additional resources, or skill sets that they don't already possess? And, typically what we will then do is we would list those out. And from there, we kind of decide, you know, based upon return on investment and the available resources, how we should prioritize.
Yeah.
And often enough, it's not necessarily the thing often is not necessarily what will deliver the greatest ROI. Let's say that is the number one option. The number two option may deliver a little less ROI, but you have all the skills and resources necessary to execute. So
Yeah.
that project one is a 2-year roadmap. The project two is maybe a 6-month roadmap. Well,
Yeah.
chances are, in most cases, get that 6-month one off the list. So now
Yeah.
you're
And
not
that's,
trying to tackle
yeah.
something. Yeah.
No, I see the same thing, which is like, the biggest, the biggest value could also be one of the more expensive things to execute on.
Right.
But sometimes that sort of golden nugget is to find that thing that's going to cost you less and take less time, but also be really impactful. And where I've seen that work for customers is when you can deliver on something like that in a short amount of time, and also share that, oh, by the way, it didn't cost us a lot. We already had most of the skill set in house. That then helps build momentum and build that executive alignment around those future projects. And so that, like, in what I've seen over maybe the past 6 months, is one of the bigger pain points is getting and keeping that stakeholder alignment and championing of these projects. So I think that kind of moves the needle if you can deliver pretty quickly.
Yeah, I agree. It's easier to come back to the executives and the CFO and says, "Hey, we need more money and resources to do this project," when you've already tackled two or
Yeah.
three. It
Yeah.
makes a
When,
big
yeah.
difference.
When you've already said like, hey, this thing that we just did, yeah, by the way, here's the ROI that it delivered. It's a lot easier, to get that spend for future things when you're proving out your methodology, the skill set that your team has. And also I think that delivery model of like jumping in and doing something that's not going to take very long, it's a lot less risky to say, hey, we tried this new thing and it didn't really work very well when you spent minimal time and dollars on it. Because
Right.
you can, I've seen that work well for organizations where, it's okay to report, hey, this thing didn't work the way we hoped, but we found out really darn quickly and now we know what to do differently next time. So really building that out into the culture, I've seen as a huge game changer, to help marketing teams, get the backing they need as well as, support to grow. And I think that goes back to the other thing that we were talking about, before I thought to record this, which was the value of really focusing on one thing at a time. Because you were talking about, when we do those strategy sessions with folks and we start with that giant wish list, sometimes what I've seen is the hardest thing for folks to do is to like say, okay, we're only going to focus on these two things. Because that can be really, really scary when they go, oh my gosh, but there's this huge pile of stuff that we want to get done. But that really, like in my experience, has been what works the best, because you're really driving momentum and building this culture of we're going to try and learn. We're going to try, and learn and continue that continuous optimization is the thing that, like, to me is just so important, that if you don't have that, any of those efforts around things like, personalization and all the big fancy things that we know we have to do and get better at, um but that seems to really be the key of focusing on something that can get done, within a short amount of time, ideally no longer than a quarter, so that each quarter you have, going into those company reports, here's what the team is delivering on. Like, what's your perspective and experience with that?
I mean, yeah, often you hear of the term multitasking, and it's proven to be, not the most productive way to do
It's not
things.
a thing. Yeah.
And it's funny, you have conversations with clients and you ask them about their resources, or we're in these conversations, or well, these teams are swamped doing this, and this. Well, how long have they been doing this? Oh, it's been 2.5 years. Well, if you focus on that one thing at a time, what it really allows you to do is, number one, it allows you to perfect something, right? So if you have one project and you're focusing on that one project, it allows you to bring it to execution or to a good milestone. What it also allows your staff and your team to do is to also perfect execution. It allows them to
Yeah.
train, to learn the skill, learn the ability. So instead of trying to learn and, build up skills and resources across 7 different tools or 7 different disciplines, right? You do one thing at a time, and then you bring that thing to completion or to a certain milestone. And then you can be able to prove, that it works and deliver value and prove those KPIs. And
Yeah.
you just do that one at a time. And then over time, you move on to the next, and then the next, and then
Yep.
the next.
Yep.
And in the long run, now you've accomplished 7 things, and you've accomplished them to a point of perfection and good execution, versus you have this concurrent list of 7 or 8 projects that are all about 60% complete, and no one really knows what they're doing.
For sure. So you touched on something which I think is actually a topic for our next conversation, which is building your team's skill set, and giving that time to learn, and what we've seen work with supporting marketing teams, as they learn new stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and helping to build that confidence. So let's hold that thought, and we'll share that in the next thing.
No problem.
Thanks.